John, I want to start not in Washington, but I want to start in Texas. What happened in Texas is uh, incredibly sad. It points up potentially some of the issues that this new administration may have to confront because there are going to be more and more climate related, weather related tragedies, incidents that require some kind of overall strategy. And what's happened is, at the governmental level anyway, we've seen them unravel a lot of the improvements that have come to the Weather Service, NOAA, and just even an approach to warning systems, getting the forecasts out to many of these communities. This was both a local thing and a federal thing. It wasn't simply the blame to be laid in Washington. I wonder if you can comment on sort of the way all of these things connect around this Texas incident.
First of all, we're still learning daily about what happened, hourly, what happened in Texas. But the first thing you have to know is that global warming is a reality and the Trump administration still denies it. Second thing you have to know is that the Trump administration has gutted federal agencies, including NOAA and including FEMA. And the Supreme Court, with only one dissent, gave a green light to the layoffs that are taking place in the federal government. They did that just yesterday. I don't know if anybody could have been saved, but I can tell you that what the Trump administration is doing to the federal government and to the American people is just horrific, something I cannot comprehend in terms of the silence of the Republicans. And that's really all one can say, except what a tragedy. What a tragedy.
But I like that in discussing this, and it has to be discussed, there is an opening to have the larger discussion, which you've touched on, and that is around federal staffing and around those areas of staffing and governmental concern that need to be the focus moving forward. And again, this relates to climate issues, to weather events, to disasters. And it's not just forecasts and it's not just cutbacks that affect the ability to take
You're
those
right.
forecasts and get them out to the public, but it's also FEMA and cleanup after many of these disasters hit.
And NOAA. NOAA, look, we're going into hurricane season, and NOAA is understaffed. We're going into these tragedies, and FEMA is having its budget cut. And there's a deafening silence about it. And may I say, I listened to the science guy on CNN this morning, just happened to flip that on. And his comment was, science is mentioned in the Constitution. But the Trump administration doesn't seem to understand the importance of science. Look, take a look at what's happening with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the Department of Health and Human Services. It is catastrophic in every way. And in my mind, and I have to be blunt with you, Mark, I find it all completely outrageous, incomprehensible. The deafening silence is just astounding. And there is, and I'm going to use a word, I think it's a big word, a ding word. There is a sense of impotence that people feel. And when that, thank you. And when that happens, I think we lose something in our democratic process. So, I mean, my answer to you is, could what happened in Texas have been avoided? Maybe not. But I can tell you one thing, we are not prepared for future tragedies that are most certainly going to occur. And the blame must be leveled not only at Donald Trump and his administration, must also be leveled on the Republicans in Congress who sat passively back and allowed this to happen.
This is a really great point, that there's complicity on the Republican side.
And the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. Everybody understands that I have no self-control in these matters.
Yeah.
The headline of this morning's Chronicle, which I'm going to pull up here and I'll show you. High Court allows Trump mass firings. What in the world is the Supreme Court doing? And for someone like me, who was raised to believe that in the end the Supreme Court would do the right thing, I am just so appalled. The 6-3 majority is as complicit in all of this as any branch of government.
The mass layoffs leave a huge void in this administration and in this government. We've seen how, in that massive legislation that just passed, there's money being taken from Medicaid, there's money being taken from the EPA. There are a
Not
lot
just
of
money being taken, Medicaid is people are being deprived of medical care. As many as 80 million Americans. And you want to know something? I learned something this morning, Mark. The impact will not be felt until after the midterm elections.
Oh, yeah, they crafted this is a political document. This is not just legislation. This is a massive document, and it's political. And as a political document, it does just what John Rothman is talking about. It essentially triggers all of these things to go into effect, Medicare stuff, the Medicaid stuff, I should say, after the midterm. So the effects really won't be felt until after this midterm that everybody keeps looking forward to
Can we
on
be
the
clear?
Democratic
And I'm
side.
glad you clarified it, but I want to just make it clear to everyone. We are talking about Medicaid, not Medicare, not anything more or less than Medicaid, which was designed to help the people who need the help the most. Mark, you did not mention yet with me, but I want to mention the fact that the Secretary of Defense cut off aid to Ukraine, and the White House didn't know about it. Nobody told Donald Trump. It was all Pete Hegseth. If I were president of the United States, Pete Hegseth would be out. He never would have been appointed, but he'd be out in a minute. Can you imagine what danger it represents for the American people when you have a situation like we have in Ukraine, and where you have Vladimir Putin, who is still killing his political enemies? Another cabinet officer was found dead, jumped out of a window. God knows, I understand. It's a disaster.
Oh, one
So
was I think one was found
yesterday,
found yesterday with a bullet in his head. He
yeah.
was in the. But you're
But
right.
this
It's
is
either fenestration or bullet in the head. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, as you say, Pete Hegseth seems to have unilaterally stopped the weapons shipment to Ukraine last week, and no one knew about it. And he
that's
doesn't have it. He
incredible.
doesn't. And this speaks to the gutting of government and just the way that they have really downsized everything so that it's a handful of loyalists. Hegseth doesn't have a chief of staff or any trusted advisor, so no one's there urging him to coordinate with other government partners. And now Trump has ordered him to restart some of these shipments, but he is really someone in Hegseth who is doing his own thing, and he has created an atmosphere maybe around him at the Pentagon, which is just an echo chamber. So he does really those things that he wants to do without regard for any kind of advisors. There are none to keep him, to keep
Do
him in
people
check.
understand? I mean, I know that on the Mark Thompson program, because of the very clear and precise message you deliver, people understand. But nationally, I'm afraid people don't get it. So the question you have to ask is, where's the accountability? Because we have no way to make the Supreme Court wake up. We have no way to get the Republicans in Congress to wake up. The only thing that will succeed will be a massive Democratic vote in the midterm elections. And I'm waiting anxiously for that, because these body blows are hitting us every single day. And let me also just comment quickly. We talked about NOAA very briefly in the context of what happened in Texas. These agencies of our government are being gutted systematically. And there seems to be no one who understands the accountability, at least no one in power. So I'm deeply distressed. I am terribly concerned. You have mentioned the Epstein case, by the way. I just want to say, I know what Pam Bondi said. You know what Pam Bondi said. And there is no accountability.
Yeah, she's saying that she had the file on her desk, and she said more than that, but that was kind of a reducto on what she
Yeah.
said. Hey, I want to go to the what I consider the ongoing horror treating those who have been in this country for decades, oftentimes who've come here without documentation or in an effort to become asylees in this country, those who have legally sought asylum status, and they have been pinched off the street, taken off of high school graduation lines. They've been, I mean,
MacArthur Park. Look what happened in MacArthur Park.
MacArthur,
It's
yeah.
terrible.
MacArthur Park is a little different, although obviously this is the point. We make this point repeatedly on the show. It's a multifaceted issue, and the facet that John's talking about was this incredible show of force. It's a little, it's part of the same thing. I do want to just run it out. Since I've begun this thought and John introduced it, what John is talking about is officers on a horseback, federal presence in MacArthur Park, which is a part of Los Angeles that is frequented by many Latinos. There are, I'm sure, undocumented migrants there, maybe a lot of them. There's also drug use in the park, and that's where you go to buy a fake ID and stuff like that. And on a normal day, it's not like packed with people at all, but it was packed with federales this day, right? It was ICE agents. There was a Black Hawk helicopter. There were 17 Humvees. They swept the park. No, they didn't arrest anybody. They didn't do anything. It was just a show of force. It was an intimidation. It was intimidation theater is what it was. And so, John, that's one facet. I'm also talking about, so that was designed to intimidate and have a chilling effect, and I'm sure it works. But I'm also talking about the wanton grabbing of people off the streets from their places of business. These are people who are, again, oftentimes finishing their 30th year in this country, right? And with kids, and they have veterans in their family, et cetera. I wonder if you could just speak to where we are on this. And when you finish, I'll play you something from the Department of Agriculture head who claims that we can pretty much fill the migrant void with people who are on Medicaid, which is the most ridiculous thing.
It's astounding.
Yeah. Go ahead. Give me a thought on this, and then I'll play you.
My only comment, and I don't want people to be shocked. I am very careful in my use of language. When Abraham Ribicoff stood before the Democratic National Convention in 1968 and talked about Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago, little did I imagine that a half a century and more later, we would be talking about Gestapo tactics in the streets of the United States. Let me explain. I am not someone who equates anyone with Hitler or Hitler tactics, but I do understand police state tactics. I guess I could have said KGB instead of Gestapo. But the fact that our federal agencies are being mobilized and used to intimidate people without charges, without ability to deal with it, is to me a complete failure of the American system. What is most disturbing to me, again, is the silence of people who should know better.
Well, here is, in relation to what's being said from the GOP, here's the Secretary of Agriculture commenting on what will happen, because agriculture is going to be dramatically affected and is being dramatically affected by the fact that these migrant workers don't want to show up to work because they'll be deported. They'll be arrested. Go ahead. This is Brooke Rollins.
But I can't underscore enough. There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
Astounding.
Yeah, I mean, that's really obscene.
And can you imagine the Secretary of Agriculture of the United States making such an ignorant, horrific statement?
The other thing that she mentions here, and I think this is one of these concepts that runs through all of this, is somehow everybody who is getting government assistance is able-bodied and just lying around getting checks. That's just not the case. There are those, and their stories, some of them incredibly moving, of those who require a lift from the federal government in the form of Medicaid checks to help them with their paraplegic son. I saw in one case, there are all sorts of chronic illnesses that are prevented all of these people, and there are many, many, many cases, from being able to work. And work, this is just part of a greater problem, shouldn't be the gateway to healthcare. You should be able to get healthcare without having a job. I understand it would be great to have everybody having a job and they would have the resources and the access to medical care. This country is set up that way. I don't think it's smartly set up that way, but that's the way it is set up, John. And it's interesting to me that somehow she implies it in her comments, Brooke Rollins says, you know, so many 34 million able-bodied Medicaid recipients. Come on. I mean, that presumes something that's not in evidence.
I don't think she's ever worked in the fields. When I went to Whittier College, I spent a day in Delano picking grapes. I wanted to experience what it was like to do manual labor. It is absurd to think that people on Medicaid, many of whom need real help, should be out in the fields picking our fruits and vegetables. Do you understand how tragic this is? So this is a real question, Mark, and I'm very glad we are able to air this out. And you can go down the list. We have not talked in great depth about my disappointment in the Supreme Court. Let me remind you that Mitch McConnell voted against the removal of President Trump from office in the second impeachment trial on the grounds that these issues would be dealt with in the courts. In other words, Mitch McConnell had faith in the court system. Well, my faith, at least in the Supreme Court, has been shaken more severely than ever, because it would seem that the ideological majority is more important to them than is the fairness and the justice of what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. And do you understand why there is frustration? Do you understand why people like me, and you and I have argued about this, and I don't want to say you're right, because if I say you're right, I'm conceding the essence of American democracy. You have maintained that the system has failed, and I've tried to defend the system. But when I read the headline of this morning's paper and then took a look at the Supreme Court case, allowing the President of the United States to exert executive powers without any restraint, I thought to myself, what a horrible condition we are in. And I know that people don't feel it in a way, because our lives continue to go. We continue to go to work. We continue to go to school. But we continue to be able to pay our bills more or less. But do you understand the erosion of the American spirit on the 249th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence? That to me is just, it's deeply, deeply saddening and distressing. So anyway, I wanted to make the point.
Well, I would just round that off by saying, you know, when I talk about the fact that the system doesn't work, and you're right, we go around and around about this and the faith in the American institutions and the American system. The reason I talk about the fact that the system doesn't work and the institutions don't work is because they are populated by people. And you're right, in a sense, when you talk about the institutions and systems, if you grant that most who inhabit those systems and institutions are associated with doing the greater good. But that's not who is inhabiting those institutions and making those systems work right now. I think there is a problem in that way. And so I have such little faith in humanity, if you will. And I don't mean to say it with a grin, because it's a sad thing. It's weird too. I do want to just say this, you know, you and I and everyone watching and listening know that most people really will extend a hand to you if you're in trouble. Most people, I think, instinctively, reflexively have a desire to help out someone that they don't know who is in distress. So it's odd to me that we have built a system that also is designed to lift people up, to catch people who might need that lift, who might need to be caught. But we are now dismantling that system, and we're dismantling it on the complete fallacy that it is being abused by everyone on it.
And can we point out that it was Elon Musk who was assigned the task by the President of the United States with full confidence in Elon Musk to conduct affairs like Doge. And what we now know is that the president is at war with Elon Musk, that Elon Musk has actually called for the president's impeachment. It shows something terribly faulty about the thinking of Donald Trump. Now, I got a lot of criticism because of something I said on your show, and I want to clarify it. Donald Trump deserves an A in the way he is administering the powers of his office. That does not mean that I approve in any way, shape, or form the content of what he's doing. But this exercise in presidential power, the unitary presidency, as it is called, is one of the most disturbing developments in the history of our republic. And I say that as a historian, as someone who really believes he understands the power of the American presidency. But this craving of power and his abuse of power. With my old boss, Richard Nixon, there was an accountability when he tried to do things. With Donald Trump so far, there has not been that accountability. And that's what we must have. I offered recently to teach a course in 5 years at the Fromm Institute here in San Francisco on the abuses of power in the Trump administration, which I believe will be manifest historically. But my son asked me a question, Mark. He said, what if Trump's proposals all pan out to be positive? What if his popularity soars? And I said, we're in big trouble, but I really believe something. And I know you don't necessarily agree with me on this, but I believe that in the end, the American people will wake up. Do you remember when we talked about our long national nightmare being over, the words Gerald Ford used when he succeeded Richard Nixon? We are in the midst of a long national nightmare. There was another book published during the Reagan years called Sleepwalking Through History. But we have to wake up and understand the implications of these things. And for those of you listening to the sound of my voice who are Trump supporters, please note I am not criticizing the president on a personal basis. I believe his politics reveal all that we need to know about the danger of the Trump presidency.
Rich says privatization is a core tenet of Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation roadmap that Trump persistently denied knowing about. This is a really good point, and I've made it repeatedly on this show. You understand, they want to privatize everything, the GOP. And when I say GOP, guys, I understand many of you may be GOP. I'm talking about the jihadists. I'm talking about the Project 2025, but also half a click off from Project 2025, the Eric Princes of the world, the Blackwater head, who essentially had a private army dispatched in Iraq. Now they'll have a private militias associated with the ICE work, associated with the detention camps, which are concentration camps. They are privatizing all of this. When I say all of this, I understand not literally all of it, but a great portion of it. But the goal is to privatize all these things. I mean, the U.S. Postal Service, they'd like to privatize. They'd like to privatize a lot of the ways in which the Social Security Administration works. These government agencies that they are dismantling and making creating problems in, they will then point to and say, you see, government is not working, let's privatize it. I include the Weather Service at that. Weather,
right.
NOAA, it's settled. They have private industry that wants to charge the government for this or charge you, the consumer, for this. And
Mark,
this is an effort to privatize. So thank you, Rich, for pointing it out. I
with a
mention it from
deep,
time to time, and it's really
with a deep
central to
sense
what
of
they
sadness,
want.
deep sense of sadness, I agree with you. Can you imagine that we are sitting back and watching Alcatraz alligator in Florida?
Yeah.
And there's not a peep. Can you imagine that Donald Trump has been talking about bringing sharks into San Francisco Bay as he revitalizes Alcatraz? I mean, can you imagine these kinds of things being said by a president of the United States?
Well, he has
It-
a great, he has a great following. Even as we do the hand wringing here, these are things that he promised, John. You know, he ran on immigration reform. I think there was a conflation of the border policy, which was flawed. You know, there was a southern border policy that was leaky, to say the least. There were people coming across that really, I thought, reflected a problem at the southern border. A lot of Americans agreed. But the conflation is we're going to deport all of these people. He did say it. He was going to deport, what, 30 million? Was that it? Or 10 million? I've forgotten that because the number was absurd. I mean, there's no way there was no infrastructure to do that. But what have they done, John? In the new budget, the ICE and Department of Homeland Security budgets are off the rails. I mean, they are so well funded. They will build these detention camps, and they'll have a lot of money to do it. They will increase the number of ICE agents, maybe by 10 or 20-fold. They'll have the money to do it.
What kind of America will it be if your vision comes true?
It's not my vision. It's stipulated in the budget. Look at it. It's the old line, John. You'll appreciate the old line. What's the old line? Don't tell me your priorities. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you your priorities. You can look at the Trump budget. You can look at the GOP big, beautiful bill, and you can see that part of that big and beautiful is to off the rails fund the Department of Homeland Security.
And that's why the Democrats in the upcoming election have to run on that issue. If you tell the American people the truth, I believe they will understand and Republicans will be repudiated. I hope that's the case. And by the way, you were right earlier. It is not Republicans. This is a Trump takeover of the Republican Party, and that's what has to be repudiated.
It's interesting. Dylan Bob says, have you noticed Trump's current catchphrase, promises made, promises kept? That is something that they're saying more and more. Promises made, promises kept. And they hang a lot on that. I want to mention one thing before we lose you, John, and that is there are so few successes to celebrate with the Trump administration. I mean, I understand you can talk about the big, beautiful bill, but it's not popular with the public, et cetera. It was pushed through at the, midnight hour type thing. A government website touting the, quote, Trump effect claims more than $2.6 trillion in U.S. investments. But as it turns out, 1.3 trillion of that 2.6 trillion originated under Biden, or it was routine spending.
You remember my old line, Mark, don't confuse people with the facts.
Yeah, exactly. And when asked why the administration is taking credit for projects that happened under Biden, White House officials say, quote, the final investment decisions were announced under Trump's watch and prove that his economic policies are triggering U.S. investment.
Astounding.
And the last thing I'll say is just there was a $50 billion pledge from one company on investments into this country. That's because that's what he keeps talking about. Trillions in investments, trillions in $50 billion worth of investments threatened by Trump policies now. So that $50 billion may not even happen. So again, taking credit for stuff that half of which happened under the Biden administration, these investments, and the rest of it may be threatened by Trump policies. I think the economy is about to be lurched into a pretty dark place. And a lot of these things we talked about are the reasons.
Well, all I can say is I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear with you. I hope with all my heart that the news we convey in the days and weeks and months and years ahead will be more positive.
John, I encourage people to check out your podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothman. That's a chance to listen to John every day, comment on world events, uninterrupted by me. That's right.
Can I applaud that too?
So are you away? You're away the next few weeks?
I know I am away beginning the 1st of August. So you are stuck with me until the 1st of August.
I love it.
And I'll be back about August 21st. And may I also commend to people the Voice of San Francisco. Thank you for putting that up. We do 10 minutes on local San Francisco politics and affairs, and we invite people to listen to that as well. But it is my unique honor to appear with Mark Thompson on this program. And if you are not supporting the Mark Thompson program, please do.
Thank you, John, for that. Appreciate that. Love you, and see you soon next week then. All right. John Rothman, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.